Welcome to the PowerHaus Podcast. I'm Gabrielle Caine, and this show reveals what successful people do differently so you can too. We'll dig into the choices, habits, and turning points behind the results and leave you with one practical step to use each week. Welcome to the PowerHaus Podcast. My name is Gabrielle Caine, and I'm here with my guest, Dan Heon. How are you doing today, Dan?
Hey, I'm doing good, Gabrielle. Great to be here.
Thank you for coming here and joining us here on the PowerHaus Podcast. Would you like to start by introducing yourself and letting us know what you do?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Dan Heon, and how I would describe myself right now here today in my career in my life is I'm a passion and impact investor. And so that stems from me just really looking out there to invest in projects that make a difference in the world and make a difference in people's lives. And that stems from my 30 years of real estate investing and creating my own portfolio and investing and doing excuse me, all of the things that, creating wealth through real estate involves. And then also, I've been a real estate investment specialist mortgage broker for about 26 years and helped thousands of clients kind of build their portfolio.
Wow, that's a mouthful right there. I can't wait to dig into this. Did you always know that you wanted to do real estate?
That's an interesting story. You know what? No, I didn't know that real estate was going to be the vehicle that I ended up choosing. And it comes from when I was in my 20s, working in a job where there was a lot of men, let's say 800 men working in the plant that I worked at, and they were all worked for the company, the big company, and it was a unionized job. And my experience of a union job is to, do the bare minimum and get paid the maximum. And that again is my experience. I'm sure other people have different experiences, but that was my personal experience. And what that made me realize at a very young age is that um, I was just putting in time. Do you know what I mean? And when I would work, I was an apprentice at that time, working, with different areas of the plant to learn the craft, so to speak. So I'd work with all these different men, and I soon saw that none of those men enjoyed going to work every day. And it was a situation where they were just putting in time. And I felt that just starting out in the business. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if fast forward 20, 30 years, that's going to be me hating life, hating my job, hating the whole thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy. And it wasn't just one particular man that I met that had this experience. It was like, go to the next guy, go to the next guy. And they all had, a similar experience. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I've got to find a way to, get out of this 9 to 5 working for someone else, trading my time for money, or I'm going to end up like these 800 guys. And I'm like, I do not want that. And then plus, there is the other motivation too, that, these guys were more senior to me, above me on the totem pole. So before I ever saw a day job Monday to Friday, working 8 in the morning till 4 or 5 in the afternoon, I was going to be an old man myself before I ever saw that. So I'm like, no, this is not happening. I've got to get out of here. And so I took a look at it and said, okay, well, I know that wealthy people own real estate. I don't think that's a secret to anybody, that wealthy people own real estate. But how does a young guy in his 20s with a rusty old pickup truck and a $5,000 credit card, how does that guy go and create a portfolio in real estate? And that began my journey. And I think, when the student's ready, the teacher shows up. It's kind of like that when you're out there and let's say you focus on pink beetle bug cars and you're driving down the 401 or you're driving down the freeway, pink beetle bug cars start showing up, right? It's almost that law of attraction and that kind of thing. So eventually one course led to another course that led to a community of like-minded people supporting and growing. And that's how I really got started.
I love that. It just opened your eyes so quickly. And the fact that you can see yourself fast forwarding and saying, oh my God, that's me in 20, 30 years. Did that scare you?
I don't know if it scared me. You know what? It probably did. It scared what the future would look like. And now people, when I talk to them, are much older, realizing similar things. An example that I face all the time is a client will come to me and say, "Look, I'm 45. I've got a little bit of cash saved up, but I'm retiring, and I don't know what the future is going to look like." So I think everybody comes to that realization of, "Oh my gosh, what is my future going to look like?" at some point in their life, right? Whether you're young and party and travel, you're not really thinking about those things. But I was very fortunate, and especially in the game of real estate, to have that realization so early in life. Do you know what I'm saying? Like when I meet those people who are in their 40s and 50s, now realizing, okay, I've got to take care of my future. Well, their runway is much shorter than mine at 20s, and they look back at me and say, "Oh, you've been doing this for 30 years?" And I'm like, "Yeah." "Well, your real estate must be, sky high and doubling and all your mortgages paid off." And I'm going, "Yeah, life is pretty good." But then they say you're so lucky to have that kick in the backside, to fast forward and look at life at such a young age. So I consider myself lucky. And it was almost like maybe not lucky, meant to be.
I like the way you worded that. Absolutely. Because that's you taking control of a situation, you being self-aware enough that you can take a look at your surroundings and say, okay, this is the path that I'm headed down. In your 20s, no less. I don't think that I mean, there's probably a lot of people in their 20s, but not the majority of people out there in their 20s that are self-aware enough to be able to take a look at that and then kind of project their future and say, what path do I want to go down? Unless they have the help and guidance of parents and mentors and stuff like that, which I mean, I don't think I had that guidance myself, so I didn't even know that real estate was a thing. So did you go to this plant right outside of like right after high school, or how did that work?
Man, I had worked a previous couple of jobs, and then I was in transition between, a job that I'd worked maybe for 4 or 5 years, and then I was kind of laid off at that particular job. It was a manufacturing job, and I was looking for a career, and a career in people laugh because it was a heavy duty diesel mechanic. I'm there. I'm putting it out there. I used to put on coveralls and get all dirty and oily and smelly and wheeling out a 500-pound toolbox and work on, massive machines, right? So that's what people laugh. They're like, "Oh my gosh, you put on a banker, suit and tie now to go to work, and you used to put on big old smelly, coveralls." So people laugh at that. Like I cannot imagine you, in that, area wearing, smelly old coveralls. So it's good. I like it because I've got a perspective from both sides of that coin, right? So I can appreciate the working man as much as, anybody that wears the three-piece suit to work, that kind of idea. So I like it. And so when I was in the career change, I was really searching, what do I want to do? I really want a good, solid career. And I heard that, this mechanic one was, hey, you're going to make good money. The job is stable. There will always need these mechanics. So I thought to myself, hey, I'm going to go try that out, not even thinking about the world of real estate. And so then when I got a foot in the door, I, started out as a laborer and, a general help around the shop. And then they had the apprentice opportunity to become a full-fledged mechanic. And I thought, oh, great, I'm going to advance. I'm going to further and better myself and, improve on life. And so then I applied for that. And that was about 2 years into working for this company. And that's when I really started experiencing, what we're talking about here today about people not being satisfied, not being happy with life. And funny story to that whole event is I would see these cardboard cutouts with Jiffy markers, and on the cardboard cutout, it would have a date. And this date was something along the lines of October 13th, 2023, or whatever the date was on there. And everybody had one on their workbench. And I thought to myself, what the heck is that? And you'll smile, but you'll really get the impact of what those things were. And what that is, when a person retires, you take their age, let's say 60 years, and 6 years of age, and then you take their number of years that they worked for the company, let's say for 25 years. And when that 60 plus the 25 adds up to 85, well, boom, you are free. You are done. You get your pension. You're going to get a monthly installment for the rest of your life. And that was freedom. Okay. So that date meant freedom for every single person in there who hated going to work every day. Do you know what I'm saying? So they had to put a little reminder of why they would go to work feeling a job they hated and, destroyed them and sucked all the life out of them, because that was the Freedom Day. And it was funny when I eventually had enough real estate. I bought 12 properties my first 2 years. I had enough, properties and confidence. I said, look, I'm out. I'm tapping out. This is horrible. I'm gone. The men who all had these freedom dates on their workbench actually were congratulating me. They were saying, oh my gosh, Dan, you are so lucky. You got out. Like, you got out of the system. You got out. And for lack of a better word, they would have said lack out of a jail sentence. You know what I mean? That's how they were acting. So it was quite impactful for me. And so, I still tell those stories today because I feel that there's a lot of people out there right now who are in jobs just trading time for money to pay their rent, to pay their mortgage, to pay, their essentials to live. And I would encourage them that there's a lot more out there for them.
That is an incredible story. I love that. And as you're telling that story, one, my heart is bleeding for these people who are running on a hamster wheel or a treadmill, and they have a carrot in front of them that they made themselves on a piece of cardboard, and it's just being dangled in front of them, and they just keep running toward it every single day. And then at the same time, I'm thinking, how can you turn this around? And you turned it around very quickly. You decided, fuck that. I don't need to be on a treadmill. I get to choose what I do and how I get there. And then out of curiosity, this is just something that popped into my head is, did you ever figure out that if you stayed at that place, what your end date would be and how many times you sliced that date and cut it sooner and sooner and sooner?
No, you know what? I refuse to even do that exercise. I'm like, I took a look at how futile and how miserable these men were, and I'm like, I don't care how many times I could slice or dice that thing. I'm not staying, at 20, at 25 years old, to get to 85 meant, I would have to be there well into my 50s. I mean? Like, I'd have to be there for a long time before I got that magic number. And so I just knew it was a big number. It was decades, and I didn't need to cut it, slice it. I'm like, no, I refuse. I'm not spending decades here being a miserable person. So, even though I got paid very well, like, I'm not going to complain. And part of, what I saw was, being a journeyman mechanic, being finished my schooling at 4 or 5 years, I was making the exact same income as a guy who had been there his whole life. Do you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, where's the value there?
Yeah.
Where are you getting paid? You know what I mean? Some guy that just finished is getting paid the same as a guy who's been there his whole life and knows everything about everything. I think it's kind of demotivating, but that's my experience.
Yeah, no, I love your thought process on that. And it just shows how many people's minds work in different ways. For me, I was thinking the motivation of if it was 30 years from now, slice that, now it's 15. Okay, now I'm going to add to my portfolio and build it. Oh, now I'm down to like 8 years and so on and so forth. And it would just give me that satisfaction of I'm not listening to your number. I create my own numbers. But I can see how that would be demotivating and how you just never even want to put that date in front of you. Because now I'm thinking the day you start doing something that you love and you're passionate about is the day you stop working. So what's the point of having that date to begin with?
Yeah. Well, I kind of reverse engineered it a different way. I mean, back in those days, I think I needed about $1,500, paid half of my mortgage because I had a roommate who was paying half of my mortgage for me. So I only needed to pay half of that. And then, groceries, being a single guy, ramen noodles and all the cheap stuff, right? So, grocery, what were the basics? Was the housing, the mortgage, the taxes and all of that. And then, gas and insurance for my pickup truck. And then, so I didn't need a lot to live as a single dude. So, I worked at reverse engineered and I said, okay, I need enough cash flow coming from my real estate business of $1,500. And so how many properties do I need to get that $1,500? And then boom, I'm financially free. And that actually happened at, I think, I can't remember now. It was either 27 or 29. I never had to work again, right? You know what I mean? I was like, it was only $1,500, but I'm like, what do you do for a living? I'm like, oh, I'm a professional real estate investor. And they're like, what's that? And I'm like, well, I don't have to go to work I don't have to work a day longer in my life at 29. So, I never even thought about that, but yeah, that's a good achievement.
Hmm. Well, that sounds like, yeah, really exciting achievement and a proud moment to be able to come to that realization and say, oh, wow, I reached it and I'm not even in my 30s.
Yeah, yeah, a funny story. Now I tell people when I'm teaching and coaching and mentoring, I tell people, I say, the greatest day in your life is going to be when you walk into your boss's office and you say, you know what, boss, I've upped my income. Now up yours.
So did you do that? At the
No, no. I mean, it's such a big company. Nobody would give a crap anyways. They'd be like, you get out of here, bye. You quit,
so
beat it. You'll never get a
how did
job here
you
again.
that manufacturing company or where everyone you saw those men trading their time, how did you quit? Was there anything a big deal? Did you make a big deal out of it?
No, I mean, I just told everybody I'm giving my 2 weeks notice and, everyone's jaw drops because nobody quits. Like nobody, like until you hit that freedom date, you have a job for life and you stay there and put in your time. That's the basic mentality. So, when you give your 2 weeks notice saying, I'm done here, I won't be at work 2 weeks from now, everybody's jaw drops because that's just never heard of. You don't do that. Do you know what I'm saying? So, it was a milestone, and that's why people were coming up and congratulating me because they were saying I'm getting out of that system. And you know there was actually languaging of on the outside it works like this, on the inside it works like this. And where else do they use languaging like that but in a jail, right? Like outside the jail, inside the jail. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I'm out of here. It was crazy. So
How did that feel?
a little scary, a little nervous, right? Because realizing that, oh my gosh, I don't have a 9 to 5 job to go to. Like, there is a small little glimmer, a glimpse of, oh my gosh, what happens if that $1,500 doesn't show up next month? So I think, it's not a piece of cake, but, planning. And now I think I would do things a bit differently. I would, if I was rewinding time back, I would put 3 to 6 months of expenses away in a savings account. I mean, I was young and crazy and just foot on the accelerator. But I think, if anybody, well, Hmm. You know what? I would never recommend anybody just quit their job cold turkey and start a business. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I worked both of them. I worked my mechanic job for 2+ years before I had enough revenue coming out of my business to cover my day, or my living expenses. So, you know, uh, I don't think people should just quit and go cold turkey.
So you leave, everyone's jaws drop, and you're like, yeah, I'm kind of done. I'm not doing this anymore. And at this point, correct me if I'm wrong, you had enough incoming, we're going to say income every month because was it because you had someone living in the house with you, a roommate that paid 50% of your mortgage, or was it coming from somewhere else?
No, it was kind of both of those, right? I mean, having a roommate, paying half the expenses on my house, my mortgage, right? I mean, what do you call that? House hacking, right? Really? So, that cut my expenses down. So I didn't need as much to live. And my positive cash flow was coming from my 12 properties I had bought, right? So if each of the 12 properties had $100, that's 1,200 a month, right? That kind of idea. But if I
Okay.
had to fix anything or one place became empty, then I was a little short that month, right? So that's where the concern came in. It's like, oh, but my goodness, I've got to keep going and, figure out my cash flow. And, I heard a saying the other day that made a lot of sense to me. And it will make sense, to you when I share it. It said that wealthy people have the mindset of what can they do with their money? It's like take your money and send it out into the universe, go find some friends and come back to me in my bank account, right? Like almost that thing of go work and make me more money and have it come back, right? And that's really what was real estate has done for me is, you buy the house once and the mortgage goes down, the four ways to win that we all know, the mortgage goes down, the price goes up, you can fix and clean and paint and it goes up. And then obviously with inflation and everything else over time, you can expect your property to go up. So that's making money while we're sleeping, right? And that's why real estate is so good, is it's a vehicle where we can put money in and it just keeps growing, so to speak, right? That's what I like about it. And so wealthy people will figure out and look at different ways to get their money to grow and expand and then ultimately come back to them, at some point. Where I think kind of broke people are stuck in this mentality of I've got to save, I've got to not spend, if I make $1,000, I've got to take 200 and carve it out of there, not spend it, and go put it in a bank account and save, and eventually I'll have 200 dollars. And that's a different mindset. And you can look at it, and I agree with how the information was put out there in the sense of, okay, yes, saving $200 a month in that scenario is a good thing, and maybe you can invest in there. But if you put your mindset to creating income, you're gonna far, far, far out, pace whatever that saving that $200 is going to come from, right? So learning how to grow your money, learning how to invest your money, learning how to work in real estate, all of these things are going to pay you or anyone huge dividends if you can get the money working harder for you. That was the whole thing. And this is how I put it. You want your money working harder for you than you are working harder for the money.
Absolutely. Now, there's something that I'm missing here because I don't know. I missed how you got 12 properties in addition to your primary, and I do want to go to that. But first, there's something really important that you had touched on there, and you're saying something about how people think that if they make $1,000, they have to manage to carve out 200 and put it in the bank. Why do you not put it in the bank?
I'm I mean, we're taught as regular, kind of everyday, I call them broke people, to put it in a bank and savings account. I mean, what are you going to get in a bank account? What are the interest rates? I mean, for years it's been, especially through the COVID years, you were lucky to get 1% or 1.5% on your money. I mean, that's horrible. Inflation, if the cost of a loaf of bread is going up by 4%, and you have your money in the bank at 1 or 2%, your money is actually losing you money, right? Because you're not making enough to even cover the price of everything going up every day. So for me, putting in the bank is not an option. We need something that's going to far out surpass the rising cost of everything. I think the lessons that wealthy people just instinctually or know aren't common knowledge. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't know some of the things I know now. I wish I knew, more, back then that I know now. And I think that's why I'm really focused on, what I'm passionate about right now is making a difference in the world and teaching that younger generation that, hey, this is how the systems work. This is how money works. It's abundant. There's no shortage of money. It's almost like, you know, you hear energetically, the law of abundance or the law of attraction is like there's no shortage. There's a lot of people have this misconception that there's only X amount of millions of dollars in the world and that only the rich people have that, so I have to just settle for my few $1,000s here because those rich people have it all. And that's a misconception. It totally is. Like, I think a better way to look at it is if you put value out into the world, you will be compensated for that value.
You worded that very well. Yeah, there's more than enough money for everybody on the planet, and just claim it. This is mine. I'm taking it. And then I'm going to make it work for me too.
Yeah, that's too funny. I make a joke because I'm in the banking world that during COVID, everybody got all that free money. Well, where did they get it? They didn't reach in their bank and pull out money. No, they just like snap their fingers, boom, I'm going to create that money. And then they gave out that free money to everybody, not knowing that the consequences of, giving away free money is somebody has to pay for it somewhere, somehow, sometime. And that's why we're noticing, a $6 loaf of bread instead of 250 or 300. So I'm digressing. We'll go back to that. But yeah, don't get me started on how the government is really good at creating money.
Yeah, I know. It's yeah, we could definitely go down that rabbit hole. But I want to go back to your portfolio. So if I do a quick little playback here, out of high school, you had a couple odd little jobs. There was one that you got laid off from beyond your control. A lot of people can relate to that. That's very common. And then you ended up working at the mechanic shop for a little while. Then you went to a manufacturing business, like did I get that right? Like a factory?
Well, the manufacturing job was before the mechanic job. So the mechanic job was the very last job I ever had, and that mechanic job is the one that had all the men who hated their job and hated their work.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then you jump to I already have 12 properties. So can we backpedal on that? You can tell me like how you got started on purchasing these properties. How did you get into real estate?
Yeah, well, it came from one day I was sitting there at the mechanic job, and to pass the time on a horrible, boring day, these gentlemen would listen to talk radio. And you know that talk radio, liberals, conservatives, blue, red, like they bring up a topic and then everybody fights about that topic, right? And so that is actually intellectually stimulating. So these men I work around, hated their life. So they would just like listen to these fighting and arguments on talk radio. And so I'm listening to this blah 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 blah. Like I don't know what it was at the time, but there was an advertisement on the radio. And remember how we talked about when the student is ready, the teacher will show up like that pink beetle bug, right? I mean, so what appeared for me was this radio talk show commercial. So it was an advertisement from a real estate investor teacher out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, that put out there and said, okay, for $175, I'm going to send you a workbook and I'm going to date myself because there was 8 cassette tapes in the workbook and for $175. So I'm like, I wrote down the information, the toll-free number, whatever. And I said, okay, I'm probably getting scammed here. I'm getting totally hosed. I'm putting $175 on my credit card. And in today's money, that was probably like $700, $800. So imagine like you just randomly write a check for $800 to some guy you've never heard of, never knowing, but he's promising a dream, right? I'm like, okay, that's how I was feeling back then. I'm like, oh, I don't care. It's worth the risk. Let's do this. So I send that away, and probably 3, 4 weeks in the mail, this arrives, this, packaged, course and tapes. And I remember it was a Friday, and I opened it all up and I started listening, and my mind was blown. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Nobody teaches this stuff. How do the previous way I believed that a person could buy a house, was that you would save up money for years, right? You would just save up huge amount of down payment. And, I don't even think I knew about the five or the low down payments at that time. I thought, well, you save up 20% of the house, which, imagine the prices of houses now, according to then, but still 20% was a lot of money. So you save all this money, work hard, and then you go and sit in front of a banker, and he's sitting back in his chair with the glasses down looking at you while you tell your story. This is who I am, this is what I want to buy, this is why I want to buy it. And if he likes your story, he's going to approve your loan, and if he doesn't like your story can't help you get out of my office. So that was what I originally thought. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to buy a house. To go through that experience, like, who does that? That's terrible. I'm never going to own. to listening to the book saying, oh yeah, you know what? You can just find a seller here, and if they're really motivated, you can have them be your bank, and you just buy the house, and you can get the lawyer to paper up the contract. And I'm like, my mind was blown. Seller financing, what's that? Oh my gosh, that's like, holy cow! Like all these techniques and strategies were amazing. I had never dreamed possible that you could go out and just buy a house, with some of the techniques that this guy was sharing. So I had huge head knowledge of what was possible. Okay. But my body, myself, was scared crapless, like literally, like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to walk up to some seller. I've never done this in my life. Back then I was a little bit of a shy person, even though now I stand on stages with 400, 500, 600 people. Back in my 20s, I was a little shy guy. So how am I going to go talk to this guy? How am I going to explain how we're going to do the deal? He's going to call me nuts, crazy, kick me out of his house, and see you later. But this teacher ends up coming and putting on a weekend course. And I thought, okay, I need more information. I thought that my nervous system needed more information. Then I would be okay to go out and do these deals because I had the knowledge, but no confidence. Okay. And so, I mean, that's great, but how am I going to go and buy these houses? So this guy comes out and from Toronto to Western Canada and puts on a weekend course retreat. And I thought, okay, I need to get more information so that I can really internalize these strategies and go put them into place. And I went to that weekend and absolutely, enjoyed all of it. It was a lot of, what I learned plus more. And so I was just absorbing all of this knowledge. But what really impacted me and changed my life was on the Sunday afternoon, some people within the crowd got to stand on stage and talk a bit about themselves. And I watched a school teacher go across the stage and she said, I own 6 properties. I'm like, what? And then another guy went the other way and he says, I'm an electrician and I own 8 properties. I'm like, I'm a mechanic, dude. Like, if a school teacher can do this, that the electrician can do this, then I can do this, right? And these people who were in the room were in their 40s, like they were like successful, they're making good money. And I'm in my 20s. I'm hiding out in the back of the room. Like, I don't know anybody. I feel awkward. I don't fit in. These people are older than me. Are they going to take me serious? Being a young person in that room was challenging by itself. But I'm like, I don't care. I'm so focused. I got to learn this stuff. And what really changed my life was when at the end of that weekend they said, hey, we got a small group of investors, we get together once a month and we just share ideas, support, which really caught my attention. And for $200 a month you can come and hang out with us. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, this is getting expensive. But I really see that hanging out with those rich people up on that stage there, that school teacher, I want to get to know her, because how did she do that? And if she can help a young guy like me get out there and buy properties, that's worth the $200 for me. So I invested in that, and yeah, literally went and hung out with other successful real estate investors. And they call it the bootstrapping, where you're lifted up to success by your straps or your boots. That's what they helped me do. Really, it was like, okay, talk to this realtor. They know what a good deal looks like. Have you got your money? Okay, go talk to the mortgage broker over here and get pre-qualified, set up, and then boom, you're going to have that. So I had the great job. I had the great credit, right? And I had a great mortgage broker who told me, okay, go pay off that credit card and I'll get you another house. I'm like, what? And I just did what he told me. And I eventually, just saved up the minimum amount of down payment and would go and buy houses. So the people and community I surrounded myself with allowed me to be successful. That's plain and simple. I had the drive, but I needed people to show me the roadmap.
Yeah, sorry, let me try that one again. Having the right support system around you, the right people, makes a world of difference. And if you're surrounding yourself with people who are already doing what you want to do, then you're going to constantly elevate and get to the next level, which is exactly what you did. You figured that out in your 20s. Did you go alone or did you bring a friend or someone with you?
No, I went alone. I felt so alone. I was like crazy. Like I was telling you, I'm like in my 20, 25, 27, and everyone else is literally 45, 47. and I felt alone. Well, there was one guy actually, one guy was about 2 or 3 years older than me, and we're still friends today after 30 years. And we remember being the two young guys in a room full of 30 or 40 people, being the, young guys who, and, people appreciated that. When you see someone young trying to really do what it takes to be successful, I don't know about you, but for me, I really want to go and support and rally around them and say, hey, I wish I had started this when I was your age.
Yeah, I love it when I go to those events and I'm there in person and I'm seeing all these people who are networking and talking. But then you've got these young kids with that are really, they've got these wide eyes and they're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Kids my age are not doing this. They're going to bars, but here I am with a bunch of adults talking about things I don't understand. You just want to cheer them on. You want to pick them up and say, okay, come with me, kid. I'm going to show you everything,
Yeah.
and when you get to see that they're successful and they thought about it years before you did or whenever, and they're that mature and they're that self-aware and they're that awake, you just feel so happy inside and fulfilled to see them succeed. It's not about you. And that's something else I've noticed about these communities, is that real estate investors, the majority of them, are actually really, really happy to help you. They don't want to keep secrets to themselves. And that's not what this world is about. If you want to get ahead of the next generation and the next and the next, you need to support each other. You need to educate each other. You need to help each other. And you need to be willing to share those secrets and those stories. Well, hence the podcast, I guess.
Yeah. So the world thanks you, Gabrielle. You're bringing that out there. That's
That's not
awesome.
the way I meant it, but yeah.
Yeah. No, that's cool. And I think it's really awesome. And that's where I'm at too in my career, is like somebody rallied around me when I was young to help me lift me up to be successful. And that's what people often say, well, what do you do for a living? I say, well, what I really do, or, what I tell people. And they go, well, both. And I said, well, what I tell people is I'm an investment specialist mortgage broker. And they go, oh yeah, I got that. And then when they go down that story, I tell them that, yeah, I actually get paid by the banks to help make people wealthy. And they go, oh my gosh, I want that job. Right. So, that's the cool thing. But the really, the really, what I'm really focused on now is just passionate in impact projects. An example is I'm looking at one right now in Mexico, actually, that focuses on creating healthy people, wealthy people, and philanthropic endeavors. Just people being good, kind, awesome people, in the world, making a difference, feeding the homeless, whatever that looks like. There's no, design as a community. What do we want to make an impact in this world? So that's the kind of stuff I love doing now.
We need more of that, I think, all around the world. We need more people like you who are doing that. And when you're constantly struggling and it's an uphill battle and you're trading your time for money, you can barely live paycheck to paycheck, let alone help the other people out there who are struggling and aren't able to do that for themselves. So when you take yourself off that treadmill, we'll say, and then you build wealth for yourself, then you're able to outreach and help other people. Now imagine how fast we can multiply and lift and elevate the entire earth, everyone, when we all do that, when we all take that time and that energy and that passion and do that. So thank you for what you do because we need more of you.
Yeah, it's awesome. I guess the vision that I have, that I bring to the table and really identified with a few years ago, was, I see an impact to create a infrastructure for the world, the whole world. This is a whole world movement, I feel, where people can come together as communities to work on their health, to become healthy people, and eat good foods, take care of their bodies, exercise. You and I talked about going to the gym at the top of this meeting, and we're taking care of our bodies, and want it to last longer. We want to enjoy life. And the wealth is wealth creation. It's not secrets of how wealthy people think and how to manifest and how to make it work for you. So you're not working for the money. You just have to go out looking for that knowledge, and it's there. And then just, the third part of this whole infrastructure I'm looking to create is just come together. And I think the world needs others to care about your neighbors. I think we've gotten away from that. There's so much screen time. There's so much, oh, they're this political party, they're that political party. Oh, they believe this, they believe that. There's so much division in the world right now, and it breaks my heart. I'm like, come together. Let's go look at net zero, creating a community. I don't care what political system you believe. If you're a good, kind, awesome person, come and hang out. I don't care what, political views you have. Just come and, be a good, awesome person to the rest of the world. So that's what's been on my heart, and it starts with development of land development, because that's what I've got experience in, is creating communities with treatment centers, talk convention centers for teaching in that way. And a few of my friends are really plugged in medically and health wise. So I just get to go and share all my cool friends with the rest of the world and make a better place. So that's where I'm at right now. I love it.
Oh, wow. Okay. So let's connect the dots here. So now you're 20, you're in your 20s and you're at this event and you meet, someone else your own age. You're scared, but you're excited. And now you're learning and you're inspired. And you're surrounding yourself with the people who are doing what you want to do, the teacher. And so you decide, okay, I'm going to buy my first property. Did you have anything along the way? So you said that you went up to 12 pretty relatively quickly. Did you have any obstacles get in your way, or people who are like, no, you can't do that, you can't go, you can't exceed maybe 5 properties at a time? Anything like that happen?
Yeah. So, I mean, naturally, people are going to run out, and this myself included. You're either going to run out of down payment money, or you're going to run out of the bank mortgage money, right? Those are the two things that are going to stop you from buying as much property as you could ever envision necessary to create that lifestyle you want. And so what happened to me was, I think I bought 4 or 5 properties, and the bank said, hey, based on your income with your mechanic job, we're going to allow you to buy one more property. That's it. And then you're done. And I'm like, wow, no, look at my balance sheet. I mean, what I own versus what I owe, that's a nice number, right? I like that. This stuff is really working. This is going to get me to where I want to go. And what I tell people now is, I went from this switch of being a hobby mom and pop investor to what I now call a professional investor. And so what that means is, when you face those hurdles and someone's telling you no, you get together with all your successful buddies and you figure out, how do we fix this? How do we go past this? How do we face this challenge? Because we know that real estate works. We know that it is a vehicle that's going to get us somewhere. And if you're just a mom and pop investor, you buy one or two, and in 30 years they're all paid off, you will live a very nice life. Okay. Don't get me wrong, but you're still going to have to stay in that job for, excuse me, 20 to 30 years until those mortgages are all paid off. You will be 10 times better than the next guy who doesn't buy those 2 or 3 properties, let me tell you. But don't forget, my whole motivation is, I want to be, super successful at a very young age. And so I had to move that needle and say, okay, I'm going to become a professional real estate investor. And that's when the bank is saying no. Okay, what do I do now? And that question comes up for everybody that I've met, thousands of people in the years I've been doing this. What do I do now? And that alone, I think, needs to get focused on more than anything, because a lot of people believe in it and they run into that wall, that big brick wall. The bank shuts them down, or they're out of cash, right? And what I found being a professional, you have to become a good marketer. And what I mean by a good marketer is, you have to be able to attract capital, and you need to be able to attract deal flow. Okay. If you have endless amounts of capital and you have an endless amount of deal flow, there is no stopping you. Okay. If I told you, Gabrielle, I'm going to give you as much money as you need, go buy houses. How many do you think you could buy?
There's an endless possibility. I want them all.
Yeah, exactly. And so, that's when you become a professional. Say, okay, the bank shut me down. I'm out of all my capital. Now what? This stuff really works. I want to keep going. And so what you soon learn as a professional real estate investor is, you have to become good at both of those two things. and you have to learn how to run a business. You need to run a business like a business. You need to treat it like a business. You really need to elevate your game. You're going from a hobby purchaser, just doing it in your spare time, to, okay, this is a legit serious business. Okay, I need my tax accounting. I need my bookkeeping. I need my property management. I need my broker. I need my realtor. This is a team, serious business, outsourcing all these necessary services to get this business from level X to level Y. And that is a really good, transition, I call it. And it's a whole learning process. You don't go from, being a hobby investor, just buying in your spare time, to running a full-fledged, serious, legitimate, professional real estate investment business. So how you're going back to our whole model, going back, is you need to elevate who your next level of friends are, to get you to that next level, right? You need to go hang out with, those guys in the back corner who are sitting there doing the big deals. And, all the rookies are at the table kind of learning, how to buy their first one or two. You need to go into the back room and hang out with those big shots, that, that kind of idea. And, oh yeah, here's the account, here's this, um, and finding, oh, I did creative financing strategy. Oh, what's that look like? And, learning how to do fixed flip and sells. That's a way to create down payments for yourself, and all of these other strategies that's going to take you from the bank shut me down to, oh, I just bought another 10 or 12 properties. And so that's what I did at a very young age, and added another, I think I bought 4 or 5 with the banks, and then was able to get 8 more, just by using creative strategies. So it worked out really well.
You broke that down perfectly.
Oh,
There's a massive difference between doing it as a hobby or as a side hustle, whatever you want to call it, to full-time business professional who is running this well-oiled machine and surrounding yourself, creating your team who's going to do everything the way that it needs to be done. I mean, you can have a realtor or a broker, but you need an investor focused realtor, broker, lawyer, accountant, so on and so forth, because there's different ways to structure things. And you can be really good at what you do, but you can't do it all yourself. You can't know a lawyer's job. You can't know an accountant's job. You can't know all of it. You can know one or two, maybe three, but surrounding yourself and building that team is really, really important. So I'm glad that you pointed that out. So how old are you at this point? You've got 12 properties and you've built yourself a really good team.
I think I'm about 29, 30, somewhere in that age. Yeah,
Wow.
so it worked out really good. And, people often ask me this story, if we rewind to that time, how on earth did you ever become a mortgage broker? Like what, like you were this mechanic guy, and, whatever moved you into becoming a banker, mortgage broker? What? Tell me that story. And so that's kind of an interesting, and all of the changes in my life have happened for a specific reason. And it almost pushes a person into a corner. And my corner in this case, around 29, 30 years old, came when, those creative buying strategies we talked about. I had used seller financing to buy all the properties. So in that example, the seller was my bank, and they actually, believe it or not, they lent me part of my down payment to buy their own house. So that was crazy, right? So what are you talking about? Say that one more time. So I would buy a house, Gabrielle, I'm buying your house. I see you have a mortgage on there. Let me make those payments for you. And I see that you have about $100,000 in equity. Well, I've saved up 20,000, but I'm a short 80,000. How about I make you a deal of, I'm going to pay you that $80,000 5 years from now, but I will make you interest payments on that 80. So it's actually an investment for you. And, I don't know about you, but $20,000 that I'm giving you for that down payment is a lot of money, especially for a young guy like me. And I'm not going to screw up on those mortgage payments. I'm not going to screw up on your payments, because I will lose my $20,000. And I don't know about you, but that is a lot of money to me. And so I was able to sit in front of the sellers and have them say, oh my gosh, I believe in you. I see it in your eyes. You are never going to lose that $20,000. and we would go and take that deal and take it to the lawyers, and they would ink it exactly like I we had talked and discussed, right? So I bought tons and tons of houses like that, and it was amazing. But here's where it transitioned, because that seller lent me that $80,000. I didn't even think, but one day you have to pay that back. You can't just borrow that money and keep rolling it over, rolling it over. You have to pay that money. And so eventually, I got one phone call. Hey, Dan, you've been great. You have paid me on time, just like you promised for several years. I love it. You're amazing. I would do business with you, anytime, any place. But little Billy's going to university now, and I need that money to pay for his university, or I'm upgrading this house, or whatever reason or weddings. That was the other one. So and so's getting married. I need to pay for my daughter's wedding. I need that money back. And I'm like, OMG. Like, where am I going to pull hundreds of thousands of dollars out of my butt unless I go and sell all the properties that I worked so damn hard to buy? I am not selling those. Like, no way. Like, I worked too hard to get those, put good people in there, set up my business. I am not selling those. And so I had to come up with a different way. And this was for me in about 2001. So literally 25 years ago, I had to solve this problem. And at the time, in the US, I had heard stories just through all my connections that you could take your 401k, which is in Canada our RSP, and in the States, they were taking their 401k and using it as second mortgages. And I'm like, whoa, dude, that is like so cool. Like, how come we're not doing that here in Canada? So me and another friend of mine, his name is Veldon Palm. We actually phoned around to all the banks and to the CRA and to everybody and say, hey, this is being done in the States. How come we're not doing this here in Canada? And in 2001, I did the very first RSP mortgage with a company called Olympia Trust out of Calgary, Alberta, Canada, which is where I live. And so I personally did the very first RSP mortgage in Canada. So that was really cool. And so I thought, oh my gosh, I get to go and talk to people. And in 2001, there was a thing called a dot-com bust. And so that's when companies like Facebook or all those were going huge, but they didn't have the cash flow to warrant how expensive their shares were. And so people were losing money at the time on stocks. And so people were pulling money out, putting it into their RSP in a cash account because their stocks were going down. And here comes Dan saying, hey, you know what, Gabrielle? You know that money losing in your RSP? I've got this property over here where we'll take your RSP and we'll put it on my property that I own, and I'll pay you 12% interest on that money, guaranteed. If I don't pay you that 12, you come take my house away. What? You can do that? Nobody believed it was possible. And I said, look, it's all done by the banks and the lawyers. I'm not making this stuff up. And so you can imagine how many people were responding to me going, oh my gosh, you make that happen, buddy. I've got the money for you. And so I raised like hundreds of thousands of dollars in such a short period of time by doing the work and saying, hey, there's a need in the marketplace. And I solved it and, got paid. So at this time, you have to figure out what's going on in my life. So I didn't have to sell all my properties. I took RSP Investor A and I put that mortgage on my property that I owned. And that money paid the seller back their $80,000 that we talked about. And they were happy. And they wrote letters to my new investors saying, oh my gosh, this guy's amazing. He's paid me on time for years and years and years. You can imagine if you're an investor, you want to know that, right? And so,
Due diligence.
yeah. And so they checked me out and I was fine and I paid on time and all that. And here's the catch, and here's, I'll finish the story with this, is what interest rate do you think I was paying the new people, second mortgage lenders, versus a motivated seller who just wanted to sell me their house at 2% on that $80,000? I was paying 12% on, that's what the market was charging for second mortgages, even though it was through people's RSPs. So my cash flow went away. I was paying 12% instead of 1 or 2%.
Mm.
See, my $1,200 went away real fast, Gabrielle. My $1,200 went away. I didn't have to sell my houses, which was the main focus. I did not want to sell those houses, right? And so then became the transition in my life, and this is where became a mortgage broker. Got introduced, or the idea of becoming a mortgage broker, because my mortgage broker, his name is Sheldon. We're still really good friends today. Actually, yeah, we go hang out at each other's houses. He comes to Mexico to see me and my project. But he was very instrumental in telling me what to do and how to do it to get money out of the banks. And he told me, hey, you've sent me so many of your friends and business colleagues over the years to use my company. If you just helped them and became a mortgage broker yourself, you would make good money. And I'm like, what? Oh my gosh. Like, I never even thought of that. Right. And so my income went back up. And instead of sending him clients, I would just become the broker and do it myself. And he would kind of help me and show me how to do it. And so I'm like, okay, great. I stay in real estate. I don't have to sell my properties. I just, have to charge my friends for putting their RSP mortgages together, or I have to charge them to get a mortgage to buy their new rental property from TD, which of course the banks pay me to do the bank's work for them. So there's not a lot of cost to my clients for that, right? And they knew that I think like an investor. And I think this is what has really helped my career over all the years is I was a real estate investor for 7 years before I ever got into banking, right? So imagine this, you're a banker who knows and thinks like a real estate investor, but yet you're learning the rules of what the banks will do and what the banks won't do. So, I mean, you put those combinations together, and I can explain to you as an investor how the banks think. Boom, that launched my career crazy. So schools were hiring me. I was on stage teaching. How does this work? How does that work? Because nobody else was teaching what the banks do, think, and how they operate their businesses, and how does that relate to us in the investment world. So it was a
Yeah,
great
it
thing.
takes the guessing game away
It does.
completely.
It totally does.
And that makes you an even better investor. And it makes you an even better broker.
A hundred
This is
percent.
incredible. My mind is blown.
Well, I mean, now I have staff that kind of help out with things, and I've taught them and I share them. And if they have problems with, creating investor mortgages, I'll come in and step in, or they'll come into my office and say, I got this client. What do we do? How do we do it? And of course, I love, helping and problem solving. But, my big passion is, working on the big projects at this point in my career.
So you transitioned over to pre-construction and land development?
Yeah, in 2006, I bought a piece of property. It was, what is it, just under 10 acres that could fit 100 townhouses. And it was incredible because the zoning is for 100 townhouses. Now, at this time, I think I'm about 35 years old, and everything I touched had made me huge amount of money. And I'm very confident. I'm like, man, I've been doing this for almost a decade. My net worth is in the millions. This is amazing. I love this real estate stuff. And somebody flashes a new way to create money. And what is this? Proposal, it's land development. So I'll never forget the day, Gabrielle. I go and I sign my name, $2.4 million on a piece of dirt that has, how much cash flow does a piece of dirt pay you every month? Nothing.
Zero. It's
Zero.
not generating anything.
Nothing. And it broke all of my rules as a real estate investor. It's like you buy something, it has to pay its own mortgage payment for sure, for sure. Don't break that rule. And I broke that rule. But with the promise of making, millions and millions of dollars once these hundreds of townhouses were built and manufactured. So 2016, what is that now? Oh my gosh. No, 206. That was 206. So that was literally 20 years ago. And I started that project. So that became my first endeavor into the land development world, where you get to, I mean, very fulfilling at this point because you're taking a raw piece of dirt and creating housing for a community. And that breaks my heart. I would tell one, oh, you've got me started on the stories. I'll never forget the day they were ready, they were built, and this single mom with two little kids walks up to her new townhome for the very first time, and she's crying. She's literally crying, like sobbing and tears. And I can't remember. I think her name was Diane. And I said, Diane, why are you crying? You're moving into your house. She looks me right in the face and she says, Dan, not in 100 million years will I ever get the keys to my very own first brand new house that nobody's ever lived in, all perfect, spotless. And I gave her the keys and said, that is your house. You stay as long as you want. And she's literally sobbing and crying because it's a brand new freaking house. That's why I do what I love. I love making an impact, and that woman was so happy.
Oh, yeah, that's welling me up right now. There's so many people, especially actually now, 2026, so many people feel that way. So, I mean, we're thinking, oh, these are new times. I can't buy a house, even first-time home buyers plans and all that kind of stuff that, we're trying to pull together. Back then, people felt the same way. It's just that, I mean, times change or shift, or there's a new problem that we've never come across before. But it doesn't mean that it hasn't happened before. Just because it didn't happen this way, it doesn't mean it hasn't happened, because history repeats itself. And so back in 2006, even prior to that, what was it? There was a real estate crisis in, was it 2009, 2010? And it was prior to even that this woman thought, I'm never going to be able to own my own house. And you solved that problem for her.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, there was the crash in 2008.
Oh,
Um,
that's right. Yeah.
yeah, the world financial crisis, right? With all the fake mortgages that went bad and the real estate market just imploded and went down. It was bad.
So, okay, so you had raw land purchased in 2006, and you're trying to develop 100 townhouses. Um, and I'm sure that that's an entire new learning process for you altogether, more education, coaching, that kind of stuff that gets you through that. Um, love now, hindsight's 2020, that you broke some rules, because you have to learn from your mistakes to realize, shoot, there's carrying costs that go along with that, and who's going to pay that mortgage. But you also did it the right way, because you started off by buying, single family homes, or, a couple doors here and there. And you worked your way up through not only experience, but having the money to be able to purchase that and cover those carrying costs? Or did you have an alternative way of covering them?
Well, I mean, at that point in my career, as we talk about, to be a professional real estate investor, you have to raise capital and raise deal flow, right? So I'd created the deal flow, the money maker. That wasn't the problem. So really, it was my huge entry into really raising a lot of capital. So that was the other side. And so, people often ask, oh, okay, I found this really good property, but I have no capital to put the deal together. And so I'm able to kind of, show them how to raise capital, what to do, how to do it, all of that kind of thing. So I had a good project, a good money making project. I had gone out and raised several $1 million to go and do this, you know, man, $20 million land development deal, right, at 35 years old. So it was a big impact. And $30 million 20 years ago was probably like, I don't know, 60 million these days, right? So it was a huge project.
That's an
And
intimidating number.
yeah, for sure it was. And so I raised all the capital. And the good thing about raising row houses or building townhouses is that you can phase it out and you can do a little bit here, a little bit there, and a little bit here. So I actually built 28 townhouses out of the 100, right? So about roughly a third of the project. And I built those 28 of them. And man, like you said, learned a lot about how does a big project, multi-million-dollar project like this come together and fit, and all the moving pieces and all the people on the team that need to come together to make that a reality. I mean, it was fascinating and awesome, and a huge learning curve, like you said. And then, you add that in, and I'll never forget this in my whole career because you add a worldwide anomaly. Okay, this wasn't Dan doesn't know how to invest in real estate. This isn't everybody in the world not knowing how to invest in real estate, but you have a 2008 worldwide financial crisis that boom, that killed every economy out there, right? And here I am. I'll never forget this. Remember how I told you every time in my career when I get pressed into a corner, my career explodes out of that corner and goes out there. So imagine this. I have 28 townhouses, a revolving $2 million line of credit with a local bank that said, okay, you build, you sell, you pay back, you build, you sell, you pay back. And all of a sudden the world crashes and the houses that we're selling for 350 are $80,000 less. Like nobody's going to buy this thing unless there's an $80,000 discount. So these things are almost at cost or below cost. And I'm like, oh, good Lord, like what have I got myself into? All my investors, all of that. I mean, I basically, was in a pickle. And I had a bank that said, we don't care that the world has fallen apart. You owe us $2 million. Go pay that $2 million back, or we're going to take all 30. I think at that time I had 30 houses. All 30 of your houses, we're going to sell them at half price. We don't care. And we're going to get our $2 million out of you. I mean, wow, just imagine what that does to a person, right? I'm like, OMG.
It's turning my stomach.
It is.
What
It turns anybody's stomach. Like I worked so hard to build that portfolio, and now a bank came to me with a big gun and said, "You pay us back. We don't care, or else." And oh my gosh. So, the one good thing that I had going for me, again, like I said, that sets my company apart, is I know how to finance investment properties, right? And thank goodness, each one of those townhouses that I had built made good cash flow sense, rental sense. The amount of rent I could get in covered all the mortgage payment, taxes, and condo fees, and then some. So at that point, it made sense, right? And so what I eventually did is I put residential mortgages on there, and there was enough money out of the residential mortgage at 80% of what they appraised at, even though it was lower, to get rid of this $2 million. Okay. So I'm like, whew, thank goodness that. And I, put on all these mortgages on my properties, took that money out and paid, I think the interest rates at the time, I can't remember, were 5 or 6%. That's why people are like, oh, the interest rates are so high. I'm like, this is great interest rates, right? So there's nothing wrong with these interest rates right now. But anyways, I put mortgages on them, paid back that 2 million, and relieved. I mean, I took a big literal breath of freshness to say, oh my gosh, I dodged a bullet. I had to go out. I really had to roll up the sleeves, figure out how I'm going to solve this problem, put new mortgages on here, get rid of that construction company, and never deal with them again. Because they literally had a gun to my business's head and said, you pay us back, we don't care. And that's the world of banking. They protect themselves in their whole deals, right? And they will tell you that. They'll say, yeah, you know what? We're going to do the deal if we're protected and you're not. We don't care about you. We care about our money, which is crazy to think of it like that. But that's the world of banking. They're going to lend you money when they feel safe and secure that there's no possible way they can lose their money. And in this case, coming back to the whole deal, I was able to put all mortgages on there. But what didn't I have? I didn't have a way to get my millions of dollars of investors' money back into their pocket. Okay. Now, don't forget, this is '06. We saw the market, face similar things here recently, didn't we? In Toronto, Vancouver, all across Canada. Is like that wasn't our fault that all this thing in the real estate market dropped and it was out of our control. And I remember telling some of my clients over the past 20 years, be careful when the market corrects. And I remember people telling me, Dan, you're from out west, Toronto, we never go down. It's always up, up, up. Like you just don't understand what Ontario real estate is like, my friend. Like it just goes up and it never comes down. I'm like, I have a personal experience that will tell you differently on that one. So, and then eventually it happened, right? I mean, but it's just you get years and you understand that markets are cyclical and you need to hold on. And that would be my advice to younger or less experienced investors is make sure you have enough set aside to weather the storms, right? We're in this for the long game. In 20 years, when it's all paid off, you'll look back and go, that was great. It's amazing. I have a life that nobody ever would touch and dream of now, but you were able to hold on. And a lot of my friends, unfortunately, and clients weren't able to hold on. And it's a horrible, situation because they worked really, really hard. And don't forget, I faced this back in '06, right? And so I just had to go back to my investors and say, look, it's not my fault the whole world's economy went to heck in a handbasket. My promise to you is that you are never, ever going to lose this money. Right. And so I had to be in communication with my investors, tell them what I'm going to do, how I'm going to take care of them, how am I going to protect their money and grow this thing out of there. And so they all agreed, they all understood. They said, hey, we see your commitment to protecting our money. Like a lot of people were losing a lot of money, like gone, poof, gone. And I said, my commitment to you and to myself is we're not losing our money, no matter how long it takes, whatever it takes, I'm going to protect your money. And so that allowed them to kind of partner with me and work through the tough times and come out of it.
Yeah, I see that happening now. It has been happening for the last couple of years, even between, I'd say 2023 to 2026. A lot of people losing their money. Very, very similar story to what you're saying now. Do you see the similarities between then and now? And do you think that maybe history repeats itself and you're kind of just up and down, but it's going to happen again and again?
Oh, for sure. Like I see that 100%. Like here that happened to me in 2006, right? And here we're in 2026 and it took 20 years in a different well, no, because the same thing happened in Toronto, right? Because '06 the world financial crisis, hit, all every market in Canada, or in the world actually, right? So people were facing that hardship back then as well. And I do see that, it took 20 years, but it did happen. So, if you're playing the long game, you have to expect that something like that is going to happen in your career.
Yeah. You said that there's a bunch of people that, unfortunately weren't able to make it through that crisis. And I think it was 2008. But you were able to make it through. So what sets you apart from all those people who weren't able to make it through?
I think it really came down to resilience and I'm not giving up. I think, if that was my one key difference is okay, this happened. It's out of everybody's control, out of my control. My investors get that. It's not that Dan, spent the money on the Bahamas when he wasn't supposed to, it wasn't that case. So it was, hey, we have a business vehicle machine that's going to make money. Exterior influences caused a delay or a pause or a trouble in that business plan. And just realizing that it wasn't me, that it was an external force, and that I was committed, dedicated to finding a solution and making it work. And that's really what my investors saw. And they counted on me to do everything I can to protect their money and eventually get it back. So, and that's what I did. And their money, has been taken care of and protected. And, all the things that I said I was going to do, I did. And that makes that situation, much better. So, I did that land development deal and came out of it, thankfully, many years later. And I did another land development deal in the West Coast, a resort deal with $300 million deal. And that one, took my career to a whole other level. And then now, this current one is an oceanfront villa in Mexico. So I love the community aspect of it.
So what made you venture outside of Canada?
Um, I like the community and being a Canadian, I don't like the cold. So I love going south and being warm. In addition to, I think Mexico really, and this again, this is my opinion, I think Mexico really has it right. I lived down there for about 9 months to a year. And what I really saw and witnessed is that people cared about family. You know how we talk about the connection and that just everybody getting together as a good community and helping one another. I got to witness that living in Mexico. I thought, this is amazing. This is cool. This is what I think North America, Canada, the US, I think this is what's missing. And I got to experience that and love it and enjoyed it. And I thought, wow, what better place to kind of start and build this whole infrastructure that I'm looking to create than on a beachfront property in Mexico. And I love it. And the whole vision is about 6 or 8 of these resorts with 300 plus people living in them all around the world. Belize, I have a friend who's looking for a property for me right now in Australia. Yeah, so I mean, it's a big, huge community movement that, that is underway.
That is incredible. You know, that's something that I said a few years ago when I first heard about real estate, and they're saying, whatever you're dreaming, you're not dreaming big enough. Just think bigger than that. And then you come up with something else and you're like, nope, something bigger than that. And one day I did say that. And I thought, I've been on vacation and I've gone to all-inclusive resorts and I love, I'd love the idea of being able to show up at a resort, getting whatever room I want because I own the place. I don't have to worry about reservations. And I just dreamt up this crazy dream. But that was the problem, was that the people that I was telling this dream to weren't real estate investors and very quickly talked me down and said, that's not realistic. That's never going to happen. And I still haven't done it. So there's a massive difference between you and I, is I was telling family and friends who aren't real estate investors, who don't understand the concept of that. That doesn't happen to people like you and me. Well, guess what, Dan? You're here to say that it does. And it doesn't happen to you. It's because you made it happen. So can you maybe just walk us through in a nutshell? How do you just say, okay, I want a resort like me? How do you do that? And then bring it to fruition and make it a reality?
I think it really comes from getting connected. And what I mean by connected is what drives us inside, what motivates us inside. And I had to sit there, and it was a very distinct moment I remember. And I was asking myself, what is my vision for the world? What is my vision for my life? And I think this helps to, as I get older, it's like, okay, yeah, I love helping people with their finances, but what is the legacy I want to leave in this world? And what is my vision? What is my mission? What is my purpose? What is that purpose? And I got to sitting there and I think, you know what, as I get into the 50s, my body's not quite as maybe as healthy as it was in my 30s and 40s. So health is number one. So I definitely want to take a look at being a healthy person. If I'm going to live this beautiful life and make an impact in the world, I need to be healthy, and everyone around me needs to be healthy. There's no doubt about that. So that is definitely one of my passions. Okay, great. What is my other passion? Well, my other passion is showing, teaching, motivating, inspiring, and showing people that they don't have to settle in life. They can. If a crazy university dropout like me can do this, then anybody can do it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not like, oh, this ultra intelligent, smart guy. I know a lot, and I know a lot about my craft because I've spent so many years doing it. But, you don't need to have this, ultra high IQ to do what we're talking about here, right? So, um, teaching people about wealth and all the people that are in my sphere of influence that I've met over the years that have the same passion to teach and make the world a better place, and showing people that financial abundance is there for everyone. They can do it. I mean, you name it, whatever. There's such a divide in society right now, and a lack of community and commitment. I mean, screen time, right? People are actually dating and getting to know one another over a cell phone or a tablet or a laptop. I mean, what kind of a connected world is that? And so I think people are really craving that, and I'm seeing it. And that's where that whole community aspect comes in. I said, hey, if we can take care of one another and the people in our community around us, whether it be the homeless or, the medical health or whatever need is out there, as a community, you can make a huge impact in the world, right? So that was my vision and the mission, is to create a whole world infrastructure where this idea and this vision takes over and takes place.
Well, that just melts my heart, makes it feel full. And that's incredible. So, for those of us that are inspired or have this passion inside, it's, if I'm understanding you correctly, it's stay true to you, stay true to your passion, and maybe a check-in with yourself of saying, am I still on the right path? Or have I decided to change my mind? And just constantly make sure, do check-ins with yourself and just I think, how do I want to word this? I feel like listening to your story from beginning to end as a teenager going right up until 40s and 50s, that not only were you checking in with yourself, but you also wanted to bring everyone else around with you. This wasn't a solo trip. You surrounded yourself with community and an amazing support team. But then you also decided, we're going to do this with the rest of the world. I want to provide for everyone. This wasn't a selfish feat by any means. And I think that the more good that you bring to the world, it brings it back to you tenfold. Am I totally off, or do you
No,
agree?
you're 1,000% correct. Right on the money. And I think you mentioned it before, and it was brilliant. And you identified that you can't have other people take that vision and dream away from you. I don't know if people realize how important in that statement that you said. It's important. You really need to get true that the world needs you to fulfill on that dream. It needs you to fulfill on that dream. And if the rest of the broke people are stuck in, I mean, it's horrible to say, but a lot of people are like the herd mentality, right? It's like, no, that's crazy. It's never going to work. Don't do it. How can little old you make such a world impact? Like, no, we have to rise above that. And I think for me, I got lucky. I got kicked in the pants enough time in my life that it was like, oh, I don't care what's kicking in the pants, what's trying to hold me back. My life experiences have proved otherwise. And that's where I'm at, in my life. And fortunate enough that, I've been kicked in the pants and said, hey, no, we can still make this happen.
Oh, that's incredible. Thank you. If you have any advice for our listeners and what they can do today to make their dreams reality, whether it's a massive resort or anything that their imagination comes up with, what is your advice to our listeners and what they can do today?
I think that advice would be that they really have to get to know themselves, right? And really get to know what's important to themselves. And once you get clear on what's important to you, whether it be family, whether it be financial freedom, whether it be healthcare, whatever resonates with that critical piece inside of oneself that says, no matter what, I don't care what happens, where it happens, how it happens, I will make this important thing in my life a reality. Once you can connect with that, watch out, world. There's nothing going to get in your way. Or you're going to find a way to, I tell people about, the financial walls and, you're going to run out of money or the bank says like, no, how do I go around? How do I get over? How do I get like, that's the key piece is I don't care what it takes. I'm getting to the other side and I'm going to find a way through it, over it, under it, whatever. I'm going to make that happen. And I think that would be my advice is no matter what life throws at you, don't give up. That reminds me of the book Think and Get Rich by Napoleon Hill. Have you ever read that one? It's a great
Nope.
one. Okay. You got to put that one on your reading list. For everyone
That
listening too, you got to put that one. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That one, it's like 50 years old, I think, 50, maybe plus, maybe more, but it's so impactful and it kind of resonates with what I'm talking about right now.
I love that. Thank you. And lastly, if anyone listening is nearly as inspired as I am and they're interested in learning more about what you're doing and the projects that you have going on, maybe want to reach out and have an investor focused conversation. How do we find you, and how do we reach out to you, Dan?
My website, that's probably the best one. So it's my name, Dan Heon, DanHeon, media, media.com. So danheonmedia.com. They can go on there. There's a connect, lots of information and pictures and a contact form at the bottom. That would be the best.
Incredible. Well, I strongly encourage everyone listening to pick up that book, read that book, be inspired, listen to Dan's advice, because I mean, the things that you've done, Dan, are absolutely incredible. And I'm feeling inspired and fired up just by having this conversation with you. So I'm going to take this opportunity to thank you for being my guest and joining us here on the PowerHaus Podcast.
Oh, you're so welcome. It was such a pleasure, Gabrielle. Keep doing what you're doing and spread the word and get the world moving. I love it.
All right. Thank you to all our listeners for joining us here on the PowerHaus Podcast. Until next time, take care. This is the PowerHaus Podcast with Gabrielle Caine. Know someone who should be on the show? Email info@powerhouspodcast.com. Until next time, do one thing differently today.